All right, let's dive in. Ever feel like there's more to movies than meets the eye?
I think it's safe to say there's always something deeper going on.
Okay, good, because today we're talking about color, specifically the psychology of color in film.
Oh, that's a fun one.
We're going deep on this. We're pulling from this YouTube video I found called Psicologia del Color with a little paint palette emoji. It's by Gema Vadillo. And she gets into some pretty fascinating stuff about how directors, actually use color to make you feel things, like, beyond just, oh, that's a pretty picture.
Yeah, it's really interesting how much of it we process subconsciously. Like, we all know certain colors tend to evoke specific emotions.
Right, like blue can be calming, but put it in the wrong scene, and suddenly blue is creepy. It's all about context.
Exactly. And the filmmaker is in control of that context, using color, like a secret weapon.
Ooh, I like that, a secret weapon.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's start with a color that's hard to miss in movies.
Red.
Oh, red. Where do we even begin? Right. I mean, it's everywhere. It's love, passion, but then it's also, you know, blood, violence. It's pretty primal.
It gets your attention, that's for sure.
But it can also be really subtle. Like, think about the movie Her.
Oh, yeah, Her. So interesting how they use red in that film.
Yeah, I mean, it's a love story, but it's about a guy who falls in love with his virtual assistant.
It's very unusual to see technology portrayed as, like, warm and inviting.
Right. Usually it's all like cold blues and sterile whites.
Yeah.
Very futuristic, But Her red goes in the opposite direction.
And that's partly due to the red. It gives the whole film this rosy, almost intimate feeling.
It really emphasizes that connection he feels, even though, well, she's not even a real person.
Right. It makes you think if they'd gone with, say, a blue palette, it would have been a completely different movie.
Oh, totally. Okay, but for straight up in-your-face red, you got to look at The Shining. I mean, that elevator scene, the blood just pouring out.
Oh, so effective and disturbing. The red just amplifies that feeling of horror.
Ugh, yeah, it's burned into my brain. Okay, let's switch gears. Orange.
Orange. Now there's a color that can go a lot of different ways.
I always found it tough to pin down. I mean, it's warm like sunsets, and it's got that kind of adventurous, almost exotic feel.
It's definitely got energy. It's often associated with youthfulness, a kind of free spirit. You see a lot of orange in Wes Anderson films.
Oh, yeah, good point. Like all those vibrant colors in Grand Budapest Hotel, for example.
Exactly. It adds to that quirky, playful vibe he's known for.
But then you have a movie like Big Fish, where orange is, I don't know, it's a little more mysterious.
Big Fish is interesting because it plays with both sides of orange. Remember that scene where the kid walks into Spectre for the first time?
Oh, yeah, that whole town is bathed in this golden orange light.
Beautiful, right. But it also feels a little off, a little unsettling, like something's not quite right here.
It's like a visual clue that things aren't what they seem. And that orange really emphasizes that.
Exactly. It's not just pretty, it's telling you something about the story, about the atmosphere of that place.
Okay, moving on to yellow. Now, this one's tricky. It can be so cheerful, like sunshine.
Oh, yellow can be really happy. It's optimistic, bright, all that.
But it's also like the color of caution tape at a crime scene. It can be harsh.
It's true. Yellow has that duality to it. Sunshine, but also sickness, maybe even a sense of madness.
And Big Fish plays with that too, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like that field of daffodils where he meets his wife. It's gorgeous, but it also has this like unsettling edge.
It does. It's beautiful, romantic, but there's something a little too perfect about it. You know something's going to happen.
Right. It's not all sunshine and roses, literally. And then you have films like Convict, where those prison cells are painted this awful yellow.
So oppressive, yeah. It emphasizes how bleak and hopeless their situation is.
It's amazing how the same color can be used in such different ways.
That's the power of context, right? And the filmmaker's understanding of how we instinctively respond to color.
Okay, we've done red, orange, yellow. Let's talk about green. I feel like it always gets stuck playing the good guy. Nature, life, hope, all that.
It's definitely the go-to for representing the natural world, but even nature has a dark side.
Oh, absolutely. Green can be pretty sinister.
Think about villains in animated films like Scar from Lion King or Loki. Green is often used to suggest something corrupt, something poisonous.
It's like the rot beneath the surface beauty. You see that in Lord of the Rings, too. The Shire is all lush and green.
So peaceful, idyllic, all that.
But then you have Mordor, where the green is twisted, almost sickly looking.
It's a visual representation of how evil has corrupted the natural world. It's really effective.
Wow, this is making me realize how much I've been missing in movies. Like, I've always loved color, but I never thought about it this deeply.
It's easy to overlook because it's such a fundamental part of our visual experience, but once you start paying attention, you realize how much it's affecting you.
Okay, we've talked about a lot of warm colors.
Yeah.
What about blue? It's often seen as calming, peaceful.
Yeah, the ocean, the sky, vastness.
Right, but it can also be really melancholic, even scary sometimes.
Blue is interesting because that sense of vastness can go both ways. It can be peaceful, but it can also be isolating, lonely, even terrifying. It depends how it's used.
Like in Toy Story, when Woody and Buzz are stuck in Sid's room. It's all blue and shadowy. Suddenly it's not calming anymore, it's menacing.
It emphasizes how small and vulnerable they are in that moment. That scene wouldn't have the same impact if it were bathed in, say, warm yellow-white.
Good point. And then you have movies like Fight Club, where blue reflects that sense of disillusionment, that feeling being lost in a world that's lost its meaning.
Exactly. It's a more internal, almost spiritual kind of unease that blue can capture so well.
And then there's Elsa from Frozen, always in blue. It reflects her power, but also that isolation she feels because of it.
Right. It's not just about blue being sad. It's about the depth, the complexity of emotions it can suggest. Like there's a whole internal world going on beneath the surface.
Wow, okay. I'm seeing blue in a whole new light now.
And we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to uncover.
Okay, before we go down that rabbit hole, what about pink? It feels like it's gone through so many different phases.
Oh, pink has definitely had its ups and downs. But it's always been connected to, well, sweetness, innocence, femininity, although those associations are definitely
Yeah,
evolving.
and filmmakers are playing with that. Like the Grand Budapest Hotel, it's practically drowning in pink.
Oh, but it's such a specific kind of pink, right? Very pastel, very elegant. It adds to that whimsical, almost nostalgic feel.
It's like it's trying to transport us back to a simpler time. But then you have that Black Mirror episode, Nosedive. Pink means something totally different
Oh,
there.
nosedive. Yeah, that's a good one. It starts off all bright and pink, representing that fake social media-driven world.
Yeah, and as the episode goes on, that pink starts to feel more and more artificial, oppressive even.
Like it's a warning sign. This happiness is not real. Don't be fooled.
Right. It's like a commentary on how we present ourselves online versus, reality.
It's amazing how color can be used to make those kinds of statements without even saying a word.
Okay, this deep dive is already blowing my mind.
Huh.
We got to talk about purple, though. It always felt so magical to me.
Oh, purple is definitely the color of mystery, royalty, maybe even a little danger. It lends itself well to science fiction and fantasy.
Like all those crazy purple nebulas in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh yeah, stunning visuals. And it wouldn't be the same without that purple, would it?
Not at all. It really gives you that otherworldly feeling. Or like in Blade Runner 2049, those cityscapes bathed in purple neon.
So atmospheric, right? It's like a glimpse into another dimension.
Wow. I'm realizing I've been taking color for granted. It's not just background decoration. It's adding a whole other layer to the story.
That's exactly what we're trying to uncover here, and we're just getting started.
I'm hooked. What's next on our color journey?
Let's move on to a color that carries a lot of symbolic weight. Black.
Black. Yeah, that one's loaded, at least in Western cultures.
Yeah.
It's death, darkness, evil, all the heavy stuff.
It can be very dramatic, that's for sure. But it's also elegant, sophisticated, mysterious. Think about classic film noir. Those black and white films weren't just a stylistic choice.
Oh, I love film noir.
That use of black and white helped create a world of shadows, moral ambiguity. You couldn't get the same effect in color.
Yeah, that's true. The darkness itself almost becomes a character.
And you see that in more modern films, too. Black Swan uses black to visually represent the protagonist's descent into madness, her obsession. As her world gets darker, so does the film's palette.
It's like a reflection of her internal state.
Exactly. And it's interesting to note that black is actually tricky to use in film. Because it absorbs light, filmmakers have to be really creative with lighting to give it depth and texture.
Wow, I never thought about that. But it makes sense. It's like they're sculpting with shadows.
It's a real art form.
Okay.
And that brings us to black's opposite.
White.
White. Usually it's, purity, innocence, cleanliness. The good guy, basically. It can be. But just like black, white can be used in more complex ways. It can represent emptiness, coldness, a lack of life, almost. Think about Mr. Nobody.
Oh yeah, that's a visually interesting film.
The main character exists in the state of pure potential, And he's often surrounded by white, reflecting that blank slate before he makes any choices.
So the white is symbolic of the possibilities, the unknown.
Exactly. But then you have a film like Midsommar, where white is almost sinister. That Swedish village is all sunshine and white clothes, but it's hiding something truly horrifying.
Right. It's like that pristine white is a mask, a way of deceiving you.
It's a great example of how we can't always trust our initial perceptions of color. There's always more to the story.
Okay, my mind is officially blown. I'm never going to watch a movie the same way again.
And that's just the beginning. We haven't even gotten into all the nuances, all the ways filmmakers combine colors to create specific moods.
I can't wait to see what other secrets we uncover.
This is going to be fun. Buckle up.
I'm ready for more. I'm starting to see movies in a whole new light now. Like, I always knew color was important, but I never realized how much thought goes into it.
It's like a whole other language, right? And once you start to understand it, you can appreciate the artistry on a much deeper level.
Before we totally geek out on this, though, I will go back to something you said earlier about color shaping our emotions in, like, everyday life.
Oh, yeah, that's important. We've been talking about movies, but this stuff applies everywhere, like how we decorate our homes, the clothes we choose to wear.
So it's not just about filmmakers manipulating us. It's about understanding how color affects us all the time.
Exactly. Our brains are wired to respond to color. It's primal.
Okay, that makes sense. But can you give me some, like, concrete examples? Like, how can I use this knowledge in my own life?
Sure. Think about how you feel when you walk into a room painted a bright, cheerful yellow.
Okay, yeah, I feel happy.
Right. Now imagine that same room, but it's painted a dark, moody blue.
Yeah, that feels totally different. More serious, maybe a little sad.
It's the same room, but the color changes everything. And that's just one example. Think about the colors you wear. Have you ever noticed that certain colors make you feel more confident or more relaxed?
Yeah, actually I have. I never really thought about it that way, but it's true.
It's all about paying attention to how you respond to different colors. And then you can use that knowledge to create environments and experiences that support your well-being.
Okay, this is getting a little too self-help for me. Can we get back to movies? I'm ready for more cinematic secrets.
All right. Let's look at how filmmakers use color to reveal something about a character's personality, or maybe foreshadow their journey.
Ooh, I like that. Give me an example.
Okay, think about American Beauty. Remember Lester, the main character. He's going through a midlife crisis, and the film uses red in a really interesting way to symbolize his kind of awakening desires, his yearning for something more.
I remember that film being visually striking, but I didn't really pick up on that. Can you be more specific?
Sure, think about those red rose petals. They're not just there for decoration. They represent Lester's infatuation with Angela, that young woman who represents everything he feels like he's missing in his life.
Right. And the way those petals are, like, scattered everywhere, it's almost like they're consuming him.
Exactly. It's a visual metaphor for how those desires are taking over his life. And it's interesting to contrast that with the more muted colors of his suburban home, his boring job.
So the red is like a burst of passion in this otherwise dull and predictable world.
Precisely. And it's not just the rose petals. Red is used throughout the film to highlight moments of passion, rebellion, even danger. Think of the red dress Angela wears, the red car Lester buys.
Oh, wow. I'll have to rewatch that movie now.
Sure.
Okay, so red can represent passion, rebellion. What are some other examples of how color can, like, reveal something about a character?
Well, let's look at the Green Mile. The title itself refers to the green linoleum floor that leads to the execution chamber. It's subtle, but it's a really powerful image.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. It's always there in the background.
Exactly. And it's not just about death. Green is also used to represent John Coffey, the character with healing powers. He's often surrounded by green light, symbolizing his connection to nature, his ability to heal.
Right. It makes him stand out from the other prisoners. Like, he's not just another guy on death row. He's something special.
You got it. It's another example of how color can add layers of meaning to the story, even if we're not consciously aware of it.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to go back and watch all my favorite movies now.
You should. You'll be surprised by what you notice. It's like seeing them for the first time.
Okay, so we've talked about how color can be used to represent emotions, to symbolize ideas. What about more practical stuff? Like, how do filmmakers actually use color to create a mood or an atmosphere?
That's where things get really interesting, because color isn't just about individual hues, it's about how they're combined. It's about contrast, saturation, all those technical things.
Okay, so break it down for me. How does that work?
Think about a scene that's mostly blue and green. What kind of feeling does that evoke?
Hmm. Peaceful, maybe a little melancholic, like a quiet evening by the lake.
Exactly. Now imagine that same scene, but with pops of bright red or orange. Suddenly it feels more energetic, maybe even a little chaotic.
Oh, yeah, that's true. It's like the colors are clashing.
And that clash can be intentional. It can create tension, excitement, or even a sense of unease.
So filmmakers are like painters, mixing colors on a palette to create a specific mood.
That's a great analogy. And just like a painter, they have to understand how different colors interact with each other.
Okay, this is starting to make sense,
Hmm.
but there's got to be more to it than just like basic color combinations, right?
Oh, yeah, there's so much more. Think about lighting. The way a scene is lit can completely change how we perceive the colors.
Like if a scene is really brightly lit, the colors will look more intense, right?
Exactly. But if it's dimly lit, those same colors will feel more muted, maybe even a little mysterious.
Oh, wow. So filmmakers are manipulating light and shadow to create different effects with color.
Exactly. It's all about control. And the more control they have, the more subtle and nuanced their use of color can be.
Okay, this is mind-blowing. I'm never going to look at a movie set the same way again.
I know, right? It's like peeling back the layers of an onion. There's always something new to discover.
All right, before we go down that rabbit hole, let's talk about something specific. I've always been fascinated by how filmmakers use color to create like a sense of place. Like, how do they make a movie look like it's set in a specific location, even if it's all filmed on a soundstage?
Oh, that's a great question. And it's something that production designers and cinematographers think about a lot. They use color to create a visual shorthand for a place.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, think about a movie set in the American Southwest. What colors come to mind?
Lots of browns, oranges, reds,
Mhm.
like the desert.
Exactly. Those colors immediately evoke a sense of place. And filmmakers can use that to their advantage. They can create a believable world without even having to film on location.
So it's like they're using color to tell us where we are in the story.
Precisely. And they can even use color to create a sense of time. Like, think about old movies. They often have a very distinct color palette.
Yeah, they look like faded almost.
Right. And that's because the film stock they used back then reacted to light differently. So even if they wanted to, they couldn't create the same bright, vibrant colors we see in movies today.
Oh, that's fascinating. So the colors themselves can tell us something about when a movie was made.
Exactly. It's like a visual time capsule.
Okay, this is blowing my mind. I'm starting to see how everything in a movie is connected. The colors, the lighting, the costumes. It's all working together to tell a story.
And that's what makes film such a powerful art form. It's a symphony of visual elements, all working in harmony to create an emotional experience.
I've never thought about it that way before, but it's so true. It's like a whole other level of storytelling that I was completely oblivious to.
And the best part is, the more you learn about it, the more you'll notice. And the more you notice, the more you'll appreciate the artistry and craft that goes into making a great film.
I'm excited to start paying more attention.
Right.
What else should I be looking for?
Well, let's talk about how filmmakers use color to create visual metaphors.
Ooh, metaphors. I like where this is going. It's really amazing how much color impacts us, on a subconscious level.
Oh, absolutely. We might not always realize it, but our brains are constantly processing color information and using it to make sense of the world around us.
So if we're like bombarded with all this color information all the time, can it ever be, I don't know, too much? Like, could you become too aware of color?
That's an interesting question. I don't think it's about being overwhelmed, really. It's more about becoming more attuned to those subtle cues.
So like instead of just seeing red, you start to notice the different shades, the nuances.
Exactly. Think of it like, I don't know, learning to appreciate a fine wine. You start to pick up on the different notes, the complexities. It doesn't make you enjoy wine less. It just kind of deepens your appreciation.
Okay, that's a good analogy. So it's not about like overanalyzing every single color we see. It's about developing a more, I guess, mindful awareness of how color's working on us.
I think that's a great way to put it.
Okay, I have one more movie question before we wrap things up. For someone who's, just starting to think about color in this way, what's a good film to start with? Like a good example of how it's all supposed to work.
Ooh, that's tough. There are so many good ones. But if I had to pick one, maybe Blade Runner 2049.
Oh, good choice. I love that movie.
It's a visual masterpiece, and the way Villeneuve uses color is just, well, it's masterful. He's very deliberate about it. Every color choice, every shade, it all means something.
Yeah, it's got those amazing neon pinks and blues. It creates this whole, like, futuristic but also kind of nostalgic feeling.
Exactly. And it's not just about the colors themselves. It's how they work with the lighting, the composition, the whole mood of the film.
Okay, so Blade Runner 2049 is on the watch list. Any other recommendations?
Well, Mood Indigo by Michel Gondry is a fun one. It's very surreal, and the colors are always changing to reflect the character's emotions.
Oh, cool. I haven't seen that one. What about something a little more, I don't know, classic?
Well, you can't really talk about color in film without mentioning The Wizard of Oz.
True.
Yeah.
That transition from black and white to Technicolor is iconic.
It's such a powerful moment. Like, you're literally stepping into another world.
It's pure magic. Okay, so we've got a whole queue of movies to watch now. But before we let everyone go, can we talk a little more about how color affects us in everyday life?
Oh, sure. We were talking about how blue can have a calming effect. There's actually science to back that up. Studies have shown that blue can lower blood pressure and reduce anxiety.
Really? So it's not just like a feeling.
Yeah.
It's an actual physiological response.
It seems that way. And it's not just blue. Green is associated with nature, growth, so it can have a very restorative effect. Think about how you feel when you're surrounded by trees or grass.
Yeah, it's definitely calming, like a breath of fresh air.
And then you have red, which is much more stimulating. It can increase heart rate, raise blood pressure. It's associated with excitement, passion, but also danger.
So maybe not the best color to wear if you're trying to stay calm.
Probably not. Of course, everyone responds to color differently. It's not like a one-size-fits-all thing.
Right. It's more about like being aware of how different colors make you feel.
Exactly. And once you have that awareness, you can start to use color more intentionally in your own life, like choosing colors for your home that create a sense of peace and tranquility, or wearing colors that make you feel more confident and energized.
This is really making me think. I'm going to have to like reevaluate my entire wardrobe now.
Maybe so. But that's the fun part, right? Experimenting with color and seeing how it affects you.
Okay, so big takeaway for me. Color is way more powerful than I ever realized. It's not just about aesthetics. It's about like psychology, even biology. It's fascinating.
It really is. And the more you learn about it, the more you see it everywhere.
All right, well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap things up. But before we go, any final thoughts for our listeners?
Just this. Pay attention to color. In movies, in your everyday life, you might be surprised by what you discover.
Great advice. And remember, have fun with it. Color is meant to be enjoyed, so go out there and create your own colorful world.
Well said.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of color. And until next time, keep exploring.